to hold representatives from 63 species. Holographic projections danced across its curved walls, displaying star charts, tactical formations, and endless streams of data. At the center of it all sat the Galactic Security Council, 12 beings whose decisions shaped the fate of trillions. High Arbiter, Velshan of the Crythian hegemony, brought his 4 manipulator appendages together in a gesture of finality. His exoskeleton, polished to mirror brightness, reflected the concerned faces around him. "The human situation has deteriorated beyond diplomatic resolution," he announced. His voice translated simultaneously into 63 languages. "Colony Arcturus Prime has violated the expansion protocol 7 times in 3 standard cycles. They mine in restricted zones. They establish outposts in quarantined sectors, and when we issue compliance orders, they respond with excuses." A ripple of disapproval moved through the chamber. Admiral Corvin of the Zenthari Empire rose from his floating platform, his 3 eyes narrowing with barely contained irritation. The Zenthari had ruled space for 10,000 years before humanity even discovered fire. Their military doctrine was studied in every academy across the galaxy. "Excuses," Corvin repeated, his tone dripping with contempt. "The humans claim their equipment malfunctioned. They say their colonists acted without authorization. They promise investigations that never conclude." He gestured to the holographic display, which shifted to show a blue-green world orbited by dozens of stations and defensive platforms. Arcturus Prime represents everything wrong with human integration into galactic civilization. They are chaotic, unpredictable, and utterly dismissive of structures that have maintained peace for millennia. Strategic Coordinator Thexlar, a being composed primarily of coherent light patterns, pulsed with calculated precision. "The simulation models are complete, Admiral. Would you like to present them?" Corvin's mandibles clicked in approval. The center of the chamber erupted with tactical projections, ship movements, weapons trajectories, casualty predictions. The display showed the human colony's defenses in red, the Council's attack fleet in blue. "We ran 3,000 combat scenarios using every variable we could identify," Corvin explained, his voice taking on a professorial tone. "Human tactical responses, technological capabilities, known weapon systems, psychological factors. The results are conclusive. The simulation played out in accelerated time. Council ships emerged from hyperspace in overwhelming numbers. Human vessels scrambled to respond. Their formations predictable, their firepower inadequate. One by one, the red markers winked out. Defense platforms crumbled under sustained bombardment. The colony shields flickered and failed. Average duration of human resistance 4 hours 37 minutes, Thexlar reported. Maximum duration in the most favorable scenario, 6 hours 12 minutes. Minimum duration 3 hours 8 minutes. The variance is remarkably small. Human defeat is mathematically certain. Velshan's antennae twitched thoughtfully. Casualties? Council forces negligible. Perhaps 2 ships damaged, easily repaired. Human forces. Total combat losses within the first 90 minutes. Colonial population. Survivable assuming they accept surrender terms before we're forced to target surface installations. The chamber fell silent. 63 species watched the simulation play again, slower this time. There was something almost hypnotic about its precision. The way blue markers swept through red defenses like waves eroding a sandcastle. Representative Ix Hall of the Krell Confederacy raised a tentacle. "And if the humans have hidden capabilities, they've surprised us before." Corvin's laugh was sharp and humorless. "With respect, Representative, the humans have never truly surprised anyone who paid attention. Yes, they're creative. Yes, they're aggressive. But they're also reckless, technologically inferior, and dramatically outnumbered. We're deploying 200 warships against their 43 vessels. Even if every human ship performed at twice its theoretical maximum efficiency, they would still lose. They fight dirty," someone muttered from the back rows. "They fight desperately," Corvin corrected. "There's a difference. Desperation can win battles against equal opponents. Against a force 4 times your size with technology centuries more advanced?" He shook his head. "Desperation just makes the defeat more painful." Velshan surveyed the chamber. "The legal protocols have been satisfied. The humans were given 17 diplomatic warnings. They've had 3 years to comply voluntarily. Under Section 7 of the Galactic Charter, military enforcement is now authorized." His voice hardened. "All in favor of Operation Corrective Action?" Holographic markers appeared beside each representative, 63 lights blinking to green. Unanimous. Then it's decided, Velshon declared. Admiral Corvin, you will depart immediately. Jump to Arcturus Prime, deliver the final ultimatum, and if they refuse... He gestured to the simulation still playing in the chamber's center, where red markers disappeared with mathematical precision. Do what must be done, quickly and cleanly. Corvin's form straightened with military pride. High Arbiter, we will need no more than 5 hours. The humans will understand finally that there are consequences for defying galactic order. The Admiral departed, his platform gliding toward the chamber's exit. Behind him, representatives began filing out, already moving on to other matters. After all, the human situation was resolved. The simulations proved it. Mathematics didn't lie. Only Representative Ixhal remained, staring at the holographic display with her cluster of eyes. Something about the simulation bothered her, though she couldn't articulate what. The way the human ships moved, perhaps. Too predictable, too convenient. Is something wrong? Thexlar pulsed beside her. No, Ixhal said slowly. Nothing's wrong. That's what concerns me. The human problem 52 years earlier, humanity had taken its first stumbling steps into a galaxy already ancient beyond comprehension. The Crithian survey ship that discovered Earth's radio emissions had expected primitives, perhaps early industrial civilization. Instead, they found a species that had already touched their own moon, split the atom, and developed rudimentary AI. The Galactic Council's first contact protocols were designed for slow integration, decades of cultural exchange, careful technology transfers, supervised development. Humanity compressed that timeline to 15 years through sheer aggressive enthusiasm. They reverse-engineered council technology, demanded colony rights, and pushed into space with a hunger that made older species uncomfortable. They breed too fast, became a common complaint in council chambers. They expand too aggressively. They ask too many questions. They don't respect tradition. But what truly worried the establishment was humanity's military doctrine, or rather their apparent lack of one. Galactic warfare had evolved over millions of years into something resembling three-dimensional chess. Formations, counter-formations recognized tactics and appropriate responses. War was predictable, contained, and ultimately survivable. Humans didn't fight like that. During the border skirmishes of 2167, a human frigate captain named Marcus Venn had been cornered by 3 Xanthari destroyers. Standard protocol demanded surrender. The battle was mathematically lost. Instead, Venn overloaded his reactor and rammed the lead destroyer at maximum acceleration, crippling it and forcing the others to retreat. He'd survived in an escape, but had been court-martialed by his own navy for reckless endangerment and destruction of military assets. The council representatives at his trial had been confused by the prosecution. Among their species, such bold sacrifice was celebrated, not punished. He could have died, the human prosecutor explained. But he didn't, the Xanthari observer replied. He won. The council couldn't decide if humans were brilliantly unconventional or simply insane. Probably both. Admiral Corvin had spent 20 years studying humanity, trying to understand their combat psychology. His conclusion: they were children playing with weapons they barely understood, dangerous primarily to themselves. Yes, they occasionally pulled off spectacular victories through sheer luck and audacity, but luck ran out. Audacity without discipline was just another word for suicide. Now, standing on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Judgment, watching 200 warships align for jump, Corvin felt something rare: absolute confidence. All vessels report ready. Admiral, his tactical officer announced. Execute jump sequence. Destination, Arcturus Prime. Emergence formation Delta 7. The bridge hummed with controlled energy. Around the Eternal Judgment, 200 ships of the line flickered and vanished, their hulls folding through dimensions beyond human understanding. Corvin reviewed the intelligence reports one final time. Arcturus Prime population 4 million. Economic hub for human expansion into the Outer Rim. Defended by 43 registered military vessels, ranging from corvettes to the battlecruiser Defiance. Standard defensive platforms, particle shields, kinetic batteries, nothing remarkable, nothing threatening. Just another upstart colony that needed to be reminded of its place. The tactical display showed the jump countdown, 30 seconds to emergence. Prepare the ultimatum broadcast, Corvin ordered. Standard compliance terms, 30 minutes to respond. And if they refuse, sir? Corvin's mandibles clicked softly. Then we show them what 4 hours and 37 minutes looks like. 3. Commander Chen's preparation. Sarah Chen hadn't slept in 36 hours, but her eyes were clear and her hands steady. In the command center, buried 3 kilometers beneath Arcturus Prime's northern continent, she watched the same tactical displays that Admiral Corvin studied light years away, but she saw something entirely different. Hyperspace disturbance detected, her sensor officer reported. 200 contacts. Xanthari signatures. They're here. The command center, carved from solid bedrock and shielded by enough armor to survive a direct nuclear strike, erupted with controlled activity. 30 officers moved to their stations with practiced efficiency. No panic, no shouting. Just the quiet competence of people who'd trained for this moment for decades. Contingency midnight, Chen said simply. Those 2 words rippled through the command center like an electric current. Contingency midnight. The protocol that every human officer in the Arcturus system knew by heart. The plan they'd rehearsed 10,000 times. The trap that had been 30 years in the making. Chen's second in command, Major Dmitry Volkov, pulled up the master operations board. It showed not just the 43 visible ships of Arcturus Defense Force, but hundreds of other assets. Ghost assets. Hidden assets. Assets that no Council sensor sweep had ever detected because they looked like asteroids, or mining stations, or communications relays, or derelict freighters. The Council thinks we're 43 ships and some defense platforms, Volkov said quietly. They're about to learn we've been building a fortress for 3 decades. Chen allowed herself a tight smile. Humanity had learned something crucial in their 50 years among the stars. The older species were set in their ways. They followed protocols that were millions of years old. They fought wars according to rules that predated human civilization. Humans had no such handicap. When Arcturus Prime was founded 32 years ago, the colony's first military commander, General Richard Hayes, Chen's mentor, had made a presentation to the Council requesting permission to establish basic defensive capabilities. The Council approved 45 military vessels and standard planetary defenses. What they didn't know was that Hayes had been asking the wrong question. He didn't need permission to build weapons. He needed permission to build infrastructure. Every mining operation in the asteroid belt hid railgun components. Every communications satellite contained missile guidance systems. Every civilian freighter had military-grade engines and weapons hardpoints that could be activated in minutes. The colony had spent 3 decades building what looked like a thriving civilian economy. It was really the most heavily fortified position in human space. Sensor, Ghosts active, reported Lieutenant Park from Tactical. The decoy fleet is broadcasting standard signatures. On the display, 43 ships, the visible Arcturus Defense Force, moved into what looked like a panicked defensive formation. To Council sensors, they would read as real vessels with real crews, preparing to make a hopeless last stand. They were holographic projections, physics accurate down to their engine emissions and power signatures. Chen's real fleet was somewhere else entirely, hiding in the electromagnetic shadow of Arcturus Prime's larger moon, their systems running so cold they were practically invisible. Upload the targeting data to all hidden platforms, Chen ordered, and somebody get me a coffee. This is going to be a long day. Ma'am, the simulations predict the Council expects this to take 4.5 hours, Volkov reminded her. Chen took the coffee from a junior officer and sipped it slowly. Her eyes, dark and calculating, never left the tactical display where 200 blue markers, Council ships, were arranging themselves into attack formation. Dmitri, do you remember what General Hayes used to say? Which saying, ma'am? He had dozens, his favorite one, about warfare. Volkov smiled grimly. The enemy gets a vote, but they don't get veto power. Exactly. Chen set down her coffee and pulled up the encrypted channel that connected her to every ship captain, every platform commander, every Marine unit in the system. The Council ran their simulations. They voted on their timeline. 4 hours and 37 minutes of human resistance. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. Let's show them what happens when humans vote differently. On the display, the Council fleet finished its deployment. Perfect formation. Textbook positioning. Exactly as the simulations predicted. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. Admiral Corvin, personal message to Commander Chen. Put it through. Corvin's three-eyed face appeared on the main screen, his expression a mixture of authority and barely concealed contempt. Commander Sarah Chen of the Arcturus Defense Force. You are in violation of Galactic expansion protocols, sections 4, 7, and 12. You have 30 standard minutes to power down all weapons, lower your shields, and prepare for inspection. Failure to comply will result in military action. The Council does not wish to harm civilians, but we will enforce compliance. You cannot win this engagement. Your own tactical computers will confirm this. I urge you to think of your people and surrender with dignity. The transmission ended. The command center was absolutely silent. Chen stood, straightening her uniform. Record reply. The camera activated and Sarah Chen looked directly into it, knowing her words would be analyzed by Council intelligence officers, psychological warfare specialists, and military historians. Admiral Corvin, regarding your ultimatum. She smiled, and there was nothing warm in that expression. You may fire when ready. She cut the transmission. Ma'am, Volkov said quietly. That's not going to give them much hope for diplomacy. Dmitri, in about 45 minutes, diplomacy is going to look very different. Start the clock. Contingency Midnight is now active. Throughout the Arcturus system, hundreds of dormant systems awakened. Mining charges that were really kinetic kill vehicles calculated trajectories. Civilian vessels that were really Q ships charged weapons that had been hidden in cargo holds. Defense platforms that had been dismissed as obsolete during Council inspections activated sensor arrays that could track a mosquito at 10,000 kilometers. And in the electromagnetic shadow of the moon, 43 real warships began their final approach vectors, moving through space so silently that not even their own crews breathed loudly. On the tactical display, the Council's 30-minute clock began counting down. Chen watched it for exactly 10 seconds, then ignored it completely. She had her own timeline now. Admiral Corvin watched the countdown with satisfaction. 22 minutes remained on the ultimatum, and the human vessels were holding their defensive formation, exactly as predicted. Their shields were raised, weapons powered, but they weren't moving. Classic fear response. They knew they were beaten before the first shot was fired. All ships report weapons locked, his tactical officer announced. Firing solutions optimized. Maintain position, Corvin ordered. Let the clock run. Perhaps they'll see reason. But at minute 3, something unexpected happened. One of the human vessels, a destroyer on the outer edge of their formation, exploded in a cascade of brilliant fire. Then another. Then 3 more in rapid succession. Sir. The tactical officer's voice rose with excitement. Multiple human vessels experiencing catastrophic system failures. Reading reactor breaches, life support collapse. They're tearing themselves apart. Corvin leaned forward, his 3 eyes widening. They're sabotaging their own ships? It appears so, sir. Perhaps a mutiny. Crews refusing to fight a battle they know they'll lose. On the display, 12 human ships were now burning wrecks, their debris spreading across the defensive perimeter. The remaining vessels were breaking formation, some attempting to flee toward the outer system, others simply drifting as if their crews had abandoned their posts. A transmission crackled through from the Infinite Reach, one of Corvin's heavy cruisers. Admiral, we're detecting life pods. Hundreds of them. The humans are evacuating their fleet. Corvin felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and disappointment. He'd expected more from humanity. Some last desperate stand, some clever trick. Instead, they were simply giving up. All vessels advance to occupy positions. Secure the life pods. Prepare boarding parties for contact. The sensor officer's voice cracked with alarm. New signatures. 73 vessels emerging from lunar shadow. They're not broadcasting IFF. Wait, those are human signatures, but they're not the ships we were tracking. The tactical display exploded with new data. Where there had been a beaten, broken human fleet, there was now something else entirely. 43 warships, systems running hot, weapons armed, moving with the coordinated precision of a wolf pack. The destroyed human ships had been holograms. Elaborate, physics-accurate projections that had fooled every council sensor. And while Corvin's fleet had been watching ghosts die, the real human fleet had been moving into position. Evasive action, Corvin roared. All ships break formation and the first kinetic kill vehicle struck the Eternal Judgment's port quarter at 0.3% the speed of light. The universe went white. In the command center, Sarah Chen watched the tactical display with the intensity of a chess master. 3 moves from checkmate. On the display, 73 red markers, each one a mining charge that was really a guided projectile, streaked toward the Council fleet. They looked like asteroids that had been knocked loose by mining operations. Random debris, harmless, they were anything but. The first impacts came at minute 9. A Xanthari heavy cruiser took 3 hits in rapid succession, its shields flaring and collapsing under the kinetic onslaught. Armor that could withstand plasma bombardment for hours crumpled like paper against solid matter, moving at a significant fraction of light speed. Multiple Council ships taking damage, Park reported. They're trying to activate point defense, but the targeting solutions they're having trouble tracking objects that aren't broadcasting signatures. Because they're rocks, Volkov said with grim satisfaction. Very fast, very dense, very angry rocks, more impacts. A Crithian battleship lost its entire forward section. 2 Krell destroyers collided trying to evade incoming projectiles, their debris creating a cascade effect that damaged 3 more vessels. The Council's perfect formation was dissolving into chaos. Human fleet advancing, Chen ordered. Execute pattern Wolfpack 7. I want our destroyers hitting their command ships, our frigates running interference, and get the Defiance into firing position on that battle carrier. Time to show them what our primitive weapons can do up close. The Defiance, Arcturus Prime's only battlecruiser, was a third the size of a Council capital ship. But what she lacked in mass, she made up for in pure human engineering spite. Her main batteries were experimental railguns that the Council had dismissed as interesting but impractical during treaty negotiations. They were about to learn what impractical meant when you didn't care about power consumption, heat dissipation, or maintenance intervals. Captain James Wu's voice crackled over the command channel. Chen, this is Defiance. We have firing solution on the Harmonious Reach. Request permission to demonstrate why railguns are coming back in style. Granted. Light her up, Captain. The Defiance's main batteries fired in sequence 4 massive projectiles accelerating down electromagnetic rails that ran the entire length of the ship. The power drain dimmed every other system for 3 seconds. But those 3 seconds delivered more kinetic energy than most Council weapons could produce in an hour. The Harmonious Reach, a Crithian battle carrier that had seen action in 12 campaigns over 400 years, took all 4 rounds amidships. Her shields, calibrated to deflect energy weapons and absorb explosive impacts, simply weren't designed for solid projectiles moving at hypersonic speeds. The battle carrier broke in half. Jesus, someone whispered in the command center. Clock, Chen said sharply. How long has it been? 12 minutes since first contact, ma'am. 12 minutes. The Council simulations had predicted humans would last 4 hours. Admiral Corvin is hailing us, the communications officer announced. Audio only. He sounds upset, Chen almost smiled. Put him through. Corvin's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. What have you done? Those kinetic weapons violated 3 separate treaty provisions. The decoy ships violated acceptable deception protocols. Your mining operations were clearly military preparations disguised as civilian activity, Admiral, Chen replied calmly. Those treaties were between the Galactic Council and the Human Stellar Union. Arcturus Prime is an independent colony. We never signed those treaties. Legal technicalities won't save you. We still have 170 operational vessels. You're outnumbered 3 to 1. Then I suggest you use them while you still can. Chen out. She cut the transmission and turned to Volkov. He's right about the numbers. Time for Phase 2. Activate the network. 2-2. The Net Titans. Minutes 16 to 28. What the Galactic Council had failed to understand. What their million-year-old military doctrine couldn't comprehend was that humanity had never planned to win a traditional space battle. They planned to turn the entire Arcturus system into a weapon. Network activation in 3, 2, 1. Mark, Richardson announced. Across the system, 847 objects that had been catalogued as civilian infrastructure began broadcasting new signatures. Communication satellites revealed weapons hardpoints, or processing stations rotated to expose missile batteries. Derelict freighters that had been floating in high orbit for years suddenly came to life, their holds opening to reveal fighter craft and automated drones. The Council had surveyed the system. They'd cataloged the threats. They'd run their simulations. They'd counted 43 warships and dismissed everything else as civilian clutter. That clutter was now shooting back. Defensive platform Gamma 79 engaging, Park reported. Target Xanthari cruiser absolute victory. Multiple hits, target shields at 40%. Platform Delta 124 reporting contact. 2 Krell destroyers are attempting to withdraw. Platform is pursuing. Sir, the Valiant, one of our frigates, is reporting that a council ship is trying to surrender to them. Chen raised an eyebrow. 16 minutes in and they're already surrendering? It's a Krell science vessel, ma'am. Apparently their captain is protesting that they're a non-combatant and this entire operation violates the Krell Confederacy's interpretation of the military action protocols. Tell the Valiant to accept their surrender. Secure the vessel and get their crew to safety. We're not barbarians. Volkov was studying the tactical display with growing amazement. Ma'am, the Council fleet is fragmenting. They're not maintaining formation anymore. Individual captains are making independent decisions. That was the key. The critical flaw in Council doctrine that humanity had identified and ruthlessly exploited. Galactic warfare was coordinated, strategic, so chess game played by commanders who moved entire fleets like pieces on a board. It worked beautifully, as long as everyone understood the rules and followed the plan. But Contingency Midnight wasn't designed to be understood. It was designed to be chaos. Human ships didn't maintain formation, they swarmed. Hidden platforms didn't follow targeting priorities. They fired at whatever came into range. Kinetic projectiles didn't broadcast their trajectories, they just appeared out of the black and hit whatever was unlucky enough to be in their path. The Council fleet was trying to fight a coordinated battle against an enemy that refused to coordinate. It was like trying to organize a symphony while someone kept changing the sheet music. At minute 19, the human assault shifted into its next phase. Boarding teams away, reported Major Sarah Okonkwo, commander of the 5th Marine Battalion. Targets: disabled Council vessels. Orders: secure command centers, capture senior officers, download navigation data. Chen watched as 27 boarding craft, disguised as rescue shuttles, launched toward crippled Council ships. The Council had rigid protocols about boarding actions, formal challenges, rules of engagement, acceptable surrender procedures. They expected warnings, negotiations, time to prepare. Human Marines didn't issue warnings. The first boarding team hit the Xanthari cruiser Righteous Purpose at minute 21. The ship's captain was still trying to restore main power when 30 Marines in heavy combat armor came through the auxiliary airlock with breaching charges, smoke grenades, and an absolute refusal to play by anyone's rules except their own. The Righteous Purpose's command crew surrendered after 40 seconds of negotiation that mostly involved Marine Sergeant Marcus Flynn explaining, very loudly and with considerable profanity, exactly what would happen if they didn't power down immediately. First capture successful, Okonkwo reported. Xanthari cruiser secured, command staff in custody, navigation computer accessed. Ma'am, we've got their entire fleet disposition database. Looks like they brought detailed maps of their hyperspace routes, fallback positions, and supply depot locations. Copy that data to intelligence immediately, Chen ordered, and make sure those prisoners are treated properly. Feed them, give them medical attention, and for God's sake, make sure Flynn stops swearing at them. Ma'am, that's just how Flynn communicates. Then find someone who can translate his vocabulary into something that won't cause an interstellar incident. More boarding actions followed. The Krithian destroyer Eternal Watcher, the Krell frigate Harmonious Dawn, a Xanthari logistics vessel that turned out to be carrying enough supplies to sustain the entire Council fleet for 6 months. By minute 25, humanity had captured 11 Council vessels and was broadcasting their surrender messages across all standard frequencies. The psychological effect was devastating.